All right, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to this explainer, where today we're unpacking a pretty chilling realization from one of the top minds in artificial intelligence. We're talking about Max Tegmark, an MIT physicist and AI researcher who recently connected two massive forces that are completely shaping our world, and honestly, his conclusion is something we all really need to understand. He realized that the system running our economy and the math powering modern artificial intelligence, well, they actually share the exact same fatal flaw. We're talking about a mathematical trap that, if we leave it unchecked, has absolutely disastrous consequences. So let's get straight into exactly what he means by this.
I want you to just listen to the sheer weight of this statement for a second. What's happening with capitalism here is exactly analogous to the way in which superintelligence might wipe us out. Now that sounds like a tagline for a sci-fi movie, right? But it's not. This is a mathematical reality presented by a leading AI scientist. You see, Tegmark actually studied economics originally because he wanted to learn how to use market forces to get things done efficiently, without causing harm. But as he looked deeper into the architecture of modern AI, he saw the exact same dangerous mechanism at play in both systems.
So at the core of the problem is this shared, dangerous mechanism. Late-stage capitalism is driven by a single, relentless goal: maximize profit, period. And modern AI systems operate in the exact same way. As Tegmark points out, almost all of our current AI operates on something called a loss function that they try to minimize, or a reward function they try to maximize. Both of these systems are basically just blindly optimizing for one single objective, forever. Now, when companies were small, optimizing for profit worked pretty well. But now, they've grown powerful enough to capture regulators, and they just keep optimizing. And with AI, it's like we're taking these immensely powerful systems, pointing them at a single target, locking them on, and just crossing our fingers that nothing goes wrong.
But, as we know, something always goes wrong. The crucial point here is explained beautifully by a mathematical proof from Tegmark's MIT colleague, Dylan Hadfield-Manel. He showed that if you take one goal and optimize for it indefinitely, it always starts out great, but it eventually ends in total disaster. Think of it like driving to Austin, Texas. Okay, step 1. You aim south. You optimize for going as south as possible. At first, it works perfectly. You're getting closer to Austin. But here comes step 2, the minor navigational error. You're never aimed perfectly straight, and if you blindly keep optimizing for that one direction without ever stopping to check your actual surroundings, well, step 3 happens. You eventually miss Austin, veer wildly off course, and theoretically, you leave the solar system entirely. One-directional optimization always, mathematically, ends in disaster.
Which brings us to the true villain of our story. And surprise, it's not evil AI, and it's not evil humans. It is something called Moloch. Moloch is this invisible incentive structure that essentially forces everyone into a reckless race to the bottom. It's a structural pressure where all the participants completely know the race leads to a bad outcome, but the incentives make stopping mathematically impossible. It's a trap. So how is this playing out in our current reality? Well, we are in that relentless race to the bottom right now. Tech companies know they can make massive profits by building ever more powerful AI, even if it's super reckless. But because of Moloch, because of this intense incentive structure, nobody feels like they can pause. If one company stops to check for safety, a competitor just zooms right past them and wins. So humanity is essentially building these incredibly powerful tools not to serve human well-being, but to serve the race itself. As Tegmark puts it, we are building AI by humanity for Moloch.
And look, the human cost of this blind optimization, it is already here. We're not just talking about jobs disappearing. We're talking about a fundamental loss of meaning. Take the story of a 3D gaming modeler. This is someone who deeply, truly loved their craft, the pure art of creating something from nothing. But now, with the advent of all this new generative software, his entire job has been abruptly reduced to just typing prompts into a machine. The work he poured his absolute soul into, the work where he found his deepest meaning, has been completely hollowed out.
And this feeling of loss is profound. Lex Fridman actually described this beautifully when he was talking about his own love for programming. He called it an act of creation, bringing a little machine to life. But watching AI instantly generate the tricks that he spent years and years mastering, he said it feels almost painful, like a loss of innocence. He compares it to when you're a kid and you enjoy candy unapologetically, deeply and intensely. But once you grow up and learn it's actually bad for you, that pure, unadulterated joy is just gone. We are literally automating away the magic.
Now you might be wondering, how does this compare to the past? People always bring up the Industrial Revolution, right? Back then, we automated away dangerous muscle work. We got rid of the hideous, back-breaking jobs, and it largely worked out because we educated ourselves and moved into better-paying brain jobs. But the AI revolution is fundamentally different. We aren't just getting rid of the boring stuff anymore, like using a pocket calculator so we don't have to do long division. We are automating away the creative brain work, journalism, coding, art. We're automating the very jobs that humans actually love and find their identity in.
And history offers a pretty dark parallel for what happens when you are no longer economically useful. Think about the traffic horses in Boston. There used to be countless horses used for transportation and labor. They were essential. But then the car was invented. Suddenly, the horses weren't needed anymore. And as Tegmark grimly points out, when a species or a group of people is no longer economically needed by the system, well, it usually doesn't end well for them. Remember, the labor movement succeeded because companies still actually needed workers. If that need disappears, our leverage entirely disappears right along with it.
We don't even have to look to the future to see this. We are living the harms of this blind optimization right now. Because we aren't steering this technology toward human flourishing, the default outcome is doing immense damage. Income inequality is skyrocketing. U.S. life expectancy, it's been dropping for 4 years in a row. And social media algorithms are currently feeding us totally different versions of reality, driving hate and division simply because that's what maximizes engagement. And the real-world impact of that is devastating. 1/3. According to a really heartbreaking CDC study that Tegmark references, 1/3 of all teenage girls in the U.S. have considered suicide. That is the real-world impact of unleashing unchecked, optimizing algorithms onto society without prioritizing human well-being. It is a massive red flag that we are marching in entirely the wrong direction.
Which really brings us to a moment where we just need to pause, take a breath, and ask this fundamental question. Why are we doing this? Seriously, why are we racing toward a future that seems to be stripping away our meaning, automating the things we love, and actively harming our youth? Are we still driving toward Austin, or have we veered way, way off course?
But listen, it doesn't have to be this way. There is a potential paradigm shift here that's actually really hopeful. If AI does take over the act of creation and programming, perhaps we evolve. We might transition from Homo sapiens, the making human, where we find our value in building things, to Homo sentiens, the feeling human. A species that rediscovers that the true magic of being human isn't just in creating economic output, but in connecting with others, having deep conversations, and really intensifying the value of conscious, meaningful experiences. If we can safely navigate this transition, AI offers an incredible path to absolute abundance. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. We constantly hear claims today that, oh, we can't afford more teachers or we don't have enough nurses. But with AI, we can dramatically grow global wealth and produce an absolute abundance of goods and services. We can literally create a world where everyone, top to bottom, is fundamentally better off, and the physical limitations that cause so much harm today are completely eliminated.
Because technology changes the rules of the game. Let's look at history for a second. Historically, countries like Sweden and Denmark fought endless, ridiculous wars century after century. Why? Over limited resources. If Sweden got bigger, Denmark lost out. It was simple math. But then technology advanced. The overall pie got bigger, and both nations became dramatically wealthier together, without having to take from one another. AI brings that exact same dynamic, but on absolute steroids. It's a total win for everyone, but only if we control it.
So how do we actually get control? Well, this brings us to a highly debated yet vital proposal, a 6-month halt on the development of advanced AI. Just 6 months. It's a brief window to hit pause, look into our hearts, and ask if we're still going in the right direction. It's a chance for humanity to just catch its breath and implement actual, concrete safety measures before we accidentally optimize ourselves out of the solar system.
Now, I know what you're probably thinking. The immediate pushback to a pause is always geopolitical. People say, well, if we stop, China will win. But actually, that's exactly why 6 months is the specific proposed timeframe. It completely neutralizes the China argument. Everyone in the industry knows there is absolutely no way China could catch up to the West's current AI lead in just 6 months. That takes the geopolitical excuse entirely off the table, allowing us to focus on the actual existential safety issues at hand.
Furthermore, even adversarial nations actually share the exact same underlying fear. Think about it. China wouldn't necessarily be bothered by a halt, because they absolutely do not want to lose control to an unaligned superintelligence either. The common assumption is that if an American company builds artificial general intelligence first, America wins. But Tegmark argues that if it's unaligned and unsafe, everybody loses. There are 0 human winners if the system goes out of our control.
The alternative here is intentionally, purposefully steering toward human flourishing. We need to build AI by humanity for humanity, not for Moloch.
We should be the ones actively deciding to automate only the dangerous and boring jobs that we really don't want to do, while fiercely protecting the creative work that gives us our meaning. We can even build truth-seeking AI that allows everyone to easily verify facts, bringing us back to a shared reality and bridging those divides that cause so much hate in the world today.
Ultimately, AI is just a tool. It's not inherently evil. But the incentive structure driving its development right now is mathematically destined for disaster if we don't step up and grab the wheel. So what you should really take away from this explainer is this final question. Are we just going to let Moloch drive us blindly out of the solar system in a relentless race to the bottom? Or will we demand a pause, take the wheel, and intentionally steer toward a future that's actually worth feeling? Our trajectory isn't fixed yet, but nobody is slowing down, and time is rapidly running out to choose.